Let me just test it out. See how the audio sounds. Ah, we're golden.
Oh.
No. Shut those notifications off. One more time, can you talk so I can make sure I can.
Hello, hello. Jeff in Miami. From Miami. From Puerto Rico. In Miami. When was this? I'm trying to get the date from our original podcast.
The first one with Blum that we did with what was the other doctor's name?
Yeah.
Dr.
Wagner.
Tojam.
Dr. Tojam. Correct.
So, you leastowed?
Let's do it.
Brother Shub, brother Jeff Shub, aka Urban Barefoot. Dude, how are you doing, man?
Well, like I said, I was just going back and seeing when our original podcast was. I was actually intending to go give it a listen before this one, but I feel like I remember it so clearly. That little room.
That little room in Davie, Florida,
Yeah.
where we recorded that little show with Domingo. Man, there's been so many memories, so many.
Yeah, a lot has
great
happened.
A lot has happened. Not even just that conversation. Just I'm thinking about the first podcast. Like, when was that? Like October 2016. Now we're coming up on 4 years. What a bus ride it's been. I just had my first podcast guest ever on the last episode. He's another doctor, dermatologist from South Florida. But yeah, dude. Yeah, then we even had the other podcast that you had set up with, who are those guys out of Canada? The Foot Collective?
Yeah, the Foot Collective. That's right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, don't forget that, man. We've
had
done a lot of
together.
We've had a lot of barefoot moments together. Yeah, I think about we did Runyon Canyon barefoot. That was, I have that photo of us like walking from Runyon all the way to that coffee shop, and I'm just still barefoot going down Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, once you get a taste, everything transforms, and I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of the barefoot movement. I've always been a fan, probably wearing less shoes. I mean, unless I was playing sports, but you were the one who really, threw it at me full force, and I really took what you had a lot to say, from all of our conversations about it, and plus all the great effects I felt from it after, being an athlete and wearing shoes a lot. Some days, for 8 or 10 hours, thinking about being at a basketball camp and just like, I got to get these things off, especially if I'm not playing anymore.
The worst feet I see are in athletes and women, which makes sense because it's both people that have the most terrible shoes. But I think that what's most interesting is the journey that you go on once you experience this barefoot thing. And it's, going back to the Runyon Canyon example, right? We had this experience that was very intentional. We're going to hike, we're going to do it barefoot, we're going to try this out, right? And then once you go through that and you come back to the real world, so to speak, right? You come back to the city, you just reframes your whole experience up front. You're like, wait, I just did this whole hike up this mountain barefoot. Why not just keep going to the coffee shop, right? It's like, on the face of it, it's like, oh, the streets are gross, but so what, right? And I think that that's such a magical thing. So you say you've always been a fan of barefoot. I don't think I could say the same. There was a long period of time that I was, into sneakers and collecting sneakers, and I just like fell into that, that sleepiness.
No, when you call it sleepiness, I mean, I was a basketball player. I was a sneaker freak myself. I remember, I think it was one time in high school where I had just like 50 pairs of Jordans and shoes, like just stacked in a pyramid on boxes, like in my room. It was probably the peak sneakerheadness I was at, But, even before it was like, the feeling of barefoot, it was more of like realizing and reflecting on, do I need this many shoes? Do I want this many shoes? Like,
Yeah.
because, you're playing for this
Well,
athletic
for
shoe
you, it's
spots.
probably great because you probably used to get shoes like gifted to you on the regular. You got the Nike guys come and ask you whatever you wanted. You had the portal with the code, and for me, I used to pick apartments based on whether they had a closet big enough to like a separate closet for my shoes. A very DJ Khaled esque experience. And I love what you said. It's like once you take them off, you wonder, do I really need this? And it's for me, it was the portal to my whole life since then. Just that question, like, do I really need any of this? Um, so,
No, it's interesting, especially when we look at the history of this and look at the history of shoes itself. Not just where they come from, but why we throw different pieces of material around our feet. And I think the what is it, the one constant or the one thing that we still use them, or if they have the most utility and always had this utility, it's for protection. And I've been a victim of this myself. Getting foot injuries because I'm probably running around too much barefoot in places you shouldn't probably be barefoot. Like sandboarding, or playing football in the park. And I got my toe cut really, really bad. The point that it's cut down all the way to the bone and the muscles in my foot, and I get infected. You don't think you're going to keep your foot for the rest of your life, and you beat those infections. So you're like, okay, I'm going to wear shoes a little bit more during exercise activities. So, how did it become a status symbol though? Because I know if its utility has been the important thing, and the thing that probably the reason you should still be wearing shoes, just shoes that fit or the best for your health. But when and why did it become a status symbol?
that's a good question. I mean, I think yes, they first started off as a form of protection from really harsh elements, and the truth is that even sort of as I hear you speak, the harsh element that you were exposing yourself to may have been ego, right? Like I got to play harder. I have to play harder. I have to
Right?
do more. And it's not necessarily the environment, because running on grass and sandboarding isn't really a difficult activity or shouldn't be a difficult activity for a properly tuned natural human body. The problem is that we've been in shoes for so long that our feet have become deconditioned, and then when you add that desire to do more right on top of it, it becomes a kind of dangerous recipe. So athletes frequently message me on my Instagram page asking, what shoes should I wear for X, right? Basketball, soccer, whatever, volleyball. And I ask them, like, how willing are you to find out how good you actually are at playing your sport, right? Because the shoes that most people wear create the illusion of ability that's not really actually there. And you see, so you ask, like, oh, well, why shouldn't I if it's going to make me play better? Well, yeah, it is, but the consequences are pretty severe. And they're not just, there's the long-term consequences of how your body changes, right, over time, meaning your foot gets deconditioned, your foot gets reshaped. But then there's also the short-term consequences of injury. And what's really in it for you as a person when you're trading off, like, maybe running a little bit faster, jumping a little bit higher in exchange for long and short-term consequences.
Well, I know that, especially running shoes. I watched the history on that, especially how Phil Knight, who he was looking to develop this shoe, the sneakers and the whole movement behind jogging, like
Yeah.
where it came from, which is, again, pretty interesting that we tailored the shoe, like the typical athletic shoe, because people forget, we're talking athletics, less than 100 years, maybe 70 or 60 years of,
Yep.
development of this shoe. A lot of the stuff that we have today, like, just didn't exist. These weren't always like constants that human beings had to do or experience. So he was developing this for people who, I believe they were like, people that worked in offices, and they had that slight raise in the dress shoe. So he's like, okay, how can we make an athletic shoe that's as closely tailored to the foot of the shoe that people are wearing every day? Am I right there?
Yeah, so exactly. The athletic shoe was made to consider people who are already unathletic, right? So it's like, yeah, it's like, well,
How American.
yeah, exactly. It's, I, with all due respect to anybody who has any debilitating injuries or any debilities in general, I call the shoe like your first wheelchair. I mean, because what are you doing? You're supporting a structure of your body that, being a human body, as you support that part gets weaker, right? As you try to support your foot will get weaker. So if we want to go back to how shoes became a status symbol, and all of this is really, a lot of this is speculation, but I think it just helps people to really contextualize this whole experience of wearing shoes. Is that if you think back in society, back thousands of years ago, the shoe started for protection, but then it started to become a something of value, right? Like something that you had to purchase, or you either had made custom, and so then it starts to become something that only the wealthy can afford, and the wealthy can have better versions of it. And then after that, they started to realize they could put a heel under it, and so only certain people of certain um, you know social status could have their heel raised to a certain height. You think about like royalty, and they set the rules, and they could have certain heights. And then the toes getting pointy was also a symbol of status. It's like, I don't have to do hard work. I can put my feet in these things, and like, I am above, right? That's, in French culture, in I think the 1600s or so, being overweight was a symbol of status, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
could afford to eat more, right? You could afford to, and it's all kind of backwards. Well, now it's funny, because now, in the culture that we're in now, a symbol of status is actually that you're in good shape, right? That's the cool thing now to do. So it's being in shape, and I foresee that as time goes on, this ability to do things barefoot is also going to be a symbol of status, because if you think about it, it is a risky activity now, being that our feet have been destroyed by shoes for so many years and so many generations. So now, so it's a risky activity, right? So you have to be able to afford, if you get hurt, to be taken care of, right? So I can foresee that this might become like a mainstream cool thing, where like, oh, wow, look at this person, like they can go barefoot. That's awesome, right? And it's such a luxury that they can afford to take that risk.
Yeah,
So
I think like accessibility is just like one of the biggest things. It's one of the biggest hindrances in, I think capitalism itself, and like, rising in different socioeconomic labels. We decided that shoes, had some, intrinsic value, but also, we, created a market for it, and we said, like, you have to have a certain amount of money, and the person designing these gets to have these things. Except which is not a problem. I'm not against capitalism on that aspect. Like, hey, this person invented something, they sold people on the idea that wearing this thing is going to add some value. The problem is, and I think we've seen this in a bunch of things in Medicare and healthcare, is like with cereal, for example. I watched something last night, and it's like, okay, has cereal always been the most important things? Or, now that we're throwing these advertisements with bright colors and all this crazy shit to kids, and then also now we're sponsoring studies to lean into our favor, that's where, the crossover gets, kind of fucked up. And
yeah,
now people are like, well, wait, I have to wear shoes. No, the shoes are this, shoes are that. If I don't wear those things, like, I look bad, So
yeah.
you said, it's like,
They know what they're doing. They have all these studies, and they have all these scientists, right? They must be making stuff that's good for us. But it's actually one of the most pervasive and least talked about um, phenomena of our time, which is that nobody knows how bad shoes are for them, and and everybody is like trapped in this slumber of just wearing shoes because that's what you do. You just wear shoes. If you look back after World War II, the government in partnership with big corporations tried to, they brought economists in to help design a consumerist society. And I'll pause there for a
No,
second.
no, 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 no. You're good.
Yeah,
You're good.
yeah.
You're good.
So
I'm just fixing the camera.
yeah, no problem. So they brought economists in to design a consumerist society, and there's a great video on YouTube called "The Story of Stuff," which um, I'm gonna call up really quick because I want to read to you a quote. I want to read to you a quote that came out from it. That's a quote that's actually found like in it's actually found in like economics textbooks. So this was the 1950s, right? They brought on these economists to help them figure out how to reboot the economy. And the quote goes like this. It says, "Our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever increasing rate." So if you could just imagine, right? So we are now 70 years removed from that period of time, which is really in the grand scheme is not a long time, but basically we're in a culture that was designed to be consumeristic and to literally quote seek spiritual satisfaction in consumption, right? Like this is the culture that we were designed into, and this is what we are. This is what every single message that comes to us through advertising, through marketing, is based around, right? So we have this baseline of we need to buy shit, right? Like, and it's so scary because you talk about capitalism and it not being a bad thing, and I agree. However, when the components are corrupted, then it becomes a really dangerous system. Because look, my journey after, since we spoke, it's been quite a while, and my journey has gone down this road of natural living, which includes minimalism, right? And minimalism is not I don't have anything. Minimalism is I consciously question myself every day around the necessity of the things I have around me, including stuff, people, ideas, right? And so I have never been happier in my entire life than I am today. And I have the least amount of stuff I've ever had. And so there's this illusion that we seek that we'll gain satisfaction through having the things that we want. But that is bullshit. It's just such nothingness, right?
No, I think it also happens in the to the fact that most of the stuff that we need to buy is not even just good anymore. Like it's cheaper, true, but I think it's not of the highest quality and standards too, and that even goes down to some of the shoes that we buy, like that they're just aren't durable, or they're not long lasting. They're just like the quote you always told me, they're just casts for your feet.
Yeah,
They're
well,
just there to hold you
it's
together.
actually so there's a bit more complexity there, because these companies keep coming out with new technology, right? And the new technology, quote unquote.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me more about that. That's because
So
you always say like, oh, there's this new thing, and if you run on this track, we're gonna get under a 4 minute mile in Germany with the shoe mixed in with the track that we designed. Like, what are these new technologies that are developing, and are they helping the feet?
so in short, they're not helping the feet. But here's the thing: if you are functioning within a society that values consumption, right, and that values having the newest, coolest stuff, your job as a company is to make the newest, coolest stuff. And at some point, the ideas run out. So you just start to make shit up, right? You just start to make up ideas. and they got the Vapor Max and the bubbles and now they have the little balls right in the shoe. Like they just
It
got
was
to
the pump
keep,
originally. It was
yeah,
the
they just
pump
got
the
to
shoe
keep,
up to jump higher.
they just got to keep making stuff up. But here's a thing, and this is something that has been profound for me, is that the natural you is 100%, right? Anything beyond that is just dropping you off of your 100%. The natural you is 100%, right? Like trying to add stuff, supplements, and it's just going to cause you to drop your highest potential.
Well,
Uh,
like you said, I think it really fucks with people's like egos and psyches, like because every single day you're thinking like, oh my god, look what that person has. Why don't I have that? Oh my god, look what they have here. Why don't I have that? I need to buy that. I need that thing. That's
and
look at
it's
that. Look how
only
happy
because
they are.
it's only because we were programmed into that, right? We were
Mm-hmm.
designed into that. That's not the way that humans naturally were ever, until we were like blasted. I don't know if you ever read the book A Brave New World, but
Yes, Aldous Huxley. Now,
right. So in that book, the way that they raised those all of those genetically identical creatures is that they just put them in rooms and blast quotes over and over until they become ingrained into them. And one of them is really around this concept of there's no use in fixing anything. You might as well throw it out and buy a new one. And this is something, and so you talk about like right, let's switch gears a little bit here into a little bit more spiritual thing. Like you talk about traumas, right? Traumas, people think about as like major life events that really like that really cause them some deep wounds, right, in their life, and that have really shaped their thinking. But I think the more interesting ones are the really subtle ones, right? Those really subtle layers that get placed on you that are totally underneath your level, your level of consciousness, meaning like things that you just got told all the time that you never even questioned, like you got to finish your whole plate, or eat your cereal, right? It's those things, those little things that are just so deeply embedded in you, and you don't even know to ask, like, why do I do this?
I've been lucky enough to have a good skeptic, questioning mind, my whole life. I'm lucky to have had that. Where it's just like, you hear those statements. And, I mean, again, I'm way more in tuned of them now. But like, there's so many. Like, when someone uses the phrase "common sense" at me, I'm just like, what do you mean common sense? That's a pretty wide spectrum range of a statement right there. What is your common sense? Or hey, eat this; it's good for you. Like, why? Like, what inherently is so good about this for
Yeah.
me? The weird thing is, like, like you said, it hasn't been this long in history that we've acted this way. This is only very, 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 like, I wouldn't even say recent history. It's just like, because history has got such a long timeline. And, our part of existence on this planet is not even that long at all. On
So
the, on the,
even the illusion that life has been this way forever is part of that construct, right? Because it hasn't.
yeah, I mean, because like you think about like how we've all been sold, even in this such short span of time, of you want to say like the United States post 1950s, through this boom that we had up into this time now, like we are just so, the emperor's got no clothes on. Like, this is history, this is the world, and this is how it's always going to be. And I think we see that with so much going on, is that I don't even think it's the last gasp. I just think like it's like the human beings in this part of the world at this moment of time have had it so good that we don't want to let go of how this has felt and how it's been. But it's like, you just can't keep this going. It's just not even sustainable, like, to the planet. That's a whole nother topic. Like, just sustainable for the psyche. Like, the fact that these companies or corporations can sell you that you need more stuff, that they're allowed to create a whole entire economy and market off convincing you that you need more and more, and that you're
So
always going to need more and more. It's nuts.
so
And
speaking speaking of being stubborn, I wonder, like, have we really had it that good? Is two-thirds of the population being overweight or obese that good? Is, you know, the fact that 1 in 2 people get cancer, is that good? Like, again, it's an illusion, right? We've been told that we have it so good, and we believe that.
I mean, we're like I said. I mean, it's so good in the smallest sense, in the biological sense. Like we've had this many access to resources, and the longer lifespan. Because I agree, like, and you see everything going on with COVID and everything, and people complaining like, well, why are all these people dying? They're not dying from COVID, but they are dying from COVID. It's like, no, this is, if anything, this is like a wake up call for you to see like how poor of health. And this is no knock to anybody who's passed or knows anybody who's passed. I've had several, friends and acquaintances I know who've passed away from this, around the world. It's to say like, hey, because I know there's people even questioning how these people died. And it's like, there's 120,000 more deaths than there normally were in the 3 months. If you look at the 3 months from the year before and the three years before that, it's a matter of how did they die? What maybe early onsets of some kind of condition that they did have that's leading to this. And you mentioned a few of them, diabetes, obesity, cancer. 1 in 2 men, you or I, are going to get cancer in our lifetimes. Like that's just like a number.
It's not going to be me, so.
It's not going to be me either. 1 in 3 women, the same thing. And it's just crazy to think that. And again, I think that is still like the animal part of us. It's just like the fact that we have consciousness and we have an understanding of our world around us. We have a little bit more cognizance in that sense that, it's kind of like a trade-off we've given to say, oh, no, we're living a little longer. Cancer, who cares? Oh, you said a third is obese, like half is like overweight. Two-thirds? We're two-thirds obese in this country?
I mean, overweight, or yeah. I don't know if it's obese, but there's definitely two-thirds overweight, which is.
I would definitely agree with you. It's probably two-thirds overweight and like at least a third obese, because it's like that's terrible. And you think about, again, the extra cost that has on, it's not necessarily people understand, like, we don't want to give healthcare to everybody just because we should give healthcare to everybody. We want to give healthcare to everybody because we don't want, even people who have private healthcare to grow the cost of what it is to take care of somebody, especially when you find out that heart disease is the main killer in this country.
Well, so it's hard to have these conversations because we're, as a society, we're so deep in the rabbit hole that it's hard to have real conversations about, the problem. Because, so here's an example, right?
Well, let's go down it with me. We're here.
All right. So
people are tuning in and watching, or they're going to listen to this later. Take them down the rabbit hole, Dr. Shub.
So here's the issue, right? Let's start with I don't know. Let's go with just general health, right? So health is each person's responsibility, right? But then we start to bring healthcare insurance into the picture. And what it does is it starts to externalize the experience of healthcare, right? Or of taking care of yourself. Meaning, I pay all this money for this insurance, so I don't have to take care of myself. If something goes wrong, the doctor's going to take care of me, right? And so that's a big problem, right? Because once you start to externalize your experience of life, like basically everything starts to go crazy, right? In your life and in your body, because there's a certain way that our body was made to be. It was made to be, natural, connected to the earth, eating like only natural foods. I'm not going to go into any specific diet, just to say that foods that are real, right? Whatever that might be. That you were meant to move a lot, that you were meant to spend time, meditating. You were meant to spend time being bored and being creative. You weren't meant to be stuck in an office for 10 hours every day. You were meant to live with passion and to be, present in the world at all times. And we just don't do those things anymore, right? We don't do them. and we think it's okay because we have health insurance, so we can just not do that, and someone will take care of us. But it's why it's not a surprise that our that healthcare spending is like the biggest line item in our national budget, and it's just destroying our entire economy. um, and then this something like COVID comes around, and if everybody had just been taking good care of themselves, this would never have been a problem. I'm gonna, like, in total honesty, if everybody's immune system was working fine, there would be no problem, because we've been down this road before. We've been down this pandemic road before, and I don't really even want to go down that one, because there's so much controversy, and the truth is that there is no truth, right? Everybody is allowed to have their own truth, and that's all that really matters. And it's not like the mind truth, right? It's your body truth. Like, what do you feel is right? What feels right to you?
Mm.
I personally have not done anything to separate myself from society and from nature throughout this whole time, and I've felt perfectly fine. I know that I'm protected. I know that my immune system is there for me, that I was designed on this planet and for this planet, and that whatever it brings, like, we're gonna figure it out together. And I've felt amazing. I've been around people who have been sick.
Well, I mean, you take care of yourself. I mean, you're very, very model of a healthy. What are you, 30 something or you 20 something?
31.
31-year-old man. I mean, you're pretty. You dig in the dirt every day. You have a garden now. Welcome to the garden club. Probably the best move you've made, right? Just playing in the dirt. I have worms now. Like I go to the nursery at least once a week to get new things. I mean, I'm growing my own cannabis. I got my first like plant, like actually exuding some flower, and just amazing, And again, it's like that little, just connection back with nature. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, I walk to I got a good park 2 blocks away from me. I've made a new thing to once a week get to the beach and longboard up and down the boardwalk, and that's been beautiful and amazing.
How important those moments, and we avoid
They're tremendous, and we don't put a value on those to people's health and their mental health and their overall well-being. I do think it's a little tougher to say that, if everybody just had a healthy immune system, because I don't know if we'd be in that place in this country. I think that's a big what if. But I do agree that, there's no one advocating like, hey, why aren't you getting vitamin D every day? Hey, do you know that most of the vitamin D you absorb is going to be through your eyelids? You don't need to wear sunglasses if you're going outside for 15 to 20 minutes every day.
I love that you said that, because that's also something nobody talks about. I have done totally away with sunglasses, just intuitively. Like, they're not natural. I've done away with them, and I've been great.
Again, it's like another thing, that we've been sold within capitalism to say, hey, you actually need this product. And again, good for the people that have been able to make, the Oakleys, the Ray-Bans. Bravo, guys. You crushed it. You're billionaires. But, unless you have prescription eyes, and there's a reason why, you're actually damaging your eyeballs, don't Donald Trump it. Don't just stare into the sun, especially during eclipses. Like, we're not saying that. But, small things like that, getting outside, exercising, moving your body. Our buddy Jeremy, the guy just runs around town like a monkey now. I love it. Like, just complete movement. Like, but that stuff is so important. I think one of the other little markers, I don't know how scientifically it's backed, but can you stand up? And I want everybody who's listening to this or watching this, like, can you stand up without using your hands? If you're not sure, you can use your knees to stand up, but then also try and do it without your knees. Like, how great is your movement? Because that's one of the biggest markers when you get older. If you fall down, people die. Like, if you fall down, especially if no one's there, you're probably going to die. And that's, I think one of the most interesting things about people at a certain age is, their hips, and their hips breaking, and then just even falling down, which is crazy. I mean, if you just fall down, you die.
Yeah. So, keeping that movement going, and it's not about going to the gym. It's not about working out all the time.
You don't need to be a bodybuilder.
It's about doing the simple stuff, right? Like what if your bed was just lower to the ground, and every time you got in and out of bed, you like had to like play with the floor? What if you never used chairs, or you didn't use them as much, and instead you sat on the floor, and in that floor sitting, as you got up and down to go grab something, come sit back down, knowing the floor is not that comfortable, so you can't really just sit in one position. You're constantly moving around in different ways, getting a standing desk so you stand more, having toys under your desk to play with. Like, there are so many things to do, but again, they're all workarounds, right? They're all band-aids to not living the way a human was meant to live. And also the biggest construct is that getting dirty is bad, or like getting dirty is
I know, man. I think it's
is
the most important one. You just need to be sweating. You like, or like, even like outside my house, we have a little backyard area, and we turned it into a little workout palace. And I don't work out with shoes on ever out there, because it's like, you know, whether it's the dirt that's being picked up on the metal weight or the kettlebell, like, and getting that on your hands, like, and that has to do with, you know, the microbiome of just like, you kind of want a microbiome of almost like a mile of your surrounding area where you live around your house. You know, this is, you know, talking about natural defenses and building up that immunity. Like, these are the things that you're going to connect with. If there are any, you know, if a pandemic virus was even greater or crazier than what we're experiencing now was coming in, I mean, you want to be acclimated to the world that you live in around you. It's literally trying to be that in tune with it. I think it's really something to dive deeper and look into.
Well, if we dumbed ourselves down to a computer, I say that because we are the most incredibly complex and like fantastic structure that could never be compared to a computer. But if you did for a moment, the microbiome, the environment, the connection with the earth, that would be data, right? That would be software updates. That would be information that your body receives and adjusts as a result of, right? All of these things are data points that are being sent to your body for it to update and to grow. So, you know, rolling around in the dirt, in the grass, going in the ocean, this changes you in some way, right? It does. It's hard to notice, you know, in the moment, but if, you know, I talk about this all the time. Like, if I take even the saltiest person out walking in nature enough times, that person will transform. You understand what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. And to lighten on it even more, my ball fell. 1 sec. To liven on even more, it has to do with epigenetics. And, you know, you may have your DNA code, your 23 chromosomes that you've gotten from your mom and your dad, but, you know, on the cellular level, you know, that DNA can change and can mutate and delve and change and move, evolve, so to say, to the world around you. I talked about this with Michael Hinden, my cannabis guy, you know, the cannabis consultant I've had on the show a bunch of times, because he looks at that, you know, adding the microbiology to even the dirt that he's going to be growing his plants in, because that dirt, even though it's going to be indoors, is going to have microbiology in there, microbiomes, and it's going to need to delve and change, because that's going to make the soil even more diverse and give it a more unique thing. And even the biologist Scott Solomon from Rice University, who I had on, we're talking, you know, about infectious diseases as well as, you know, diseases moving into outer space and what would that look like to our DNA. You know, again, you're talking about where you would go if you're going into space. You know, by a generation or two, if we were living on Mars or the moon, the DNA would change. I mean, first and foremost because of radiation hitting, but like, I think the most interesting stat he always throws my way, it just blows my mind trying to think about it, that the farther that we've gotten away from Africa, so the people that would be, let's say, like southern Chile, or even like Alaska, like, the DNA is less unique and distinct. But if you go to Africa, like, the DNA of the people who live in Africa is even more diverse, because that's where, you know, our DNA codes had originated from. And so it's even, like, if we're going to go look at, you know, and, you know, they'll do this when they study like vaccines, you know, they do it on people in Africa, like testing them, because it's like the DNA is so diverse and so different that to build something that's going to, you know, cover the strength of humans, if we need a vaccine for something that's, you know, deadly, that's where you would look at it. That's where you would go to test it on. And it's just like, you think about traveling from the source, from the cradle of civilization all the way out to the rest of the world. It's amazing.
Yeah, so the way that your DNA gets expressed has a lot to do with how you interact with your environment. And again, so again, going back to this data and software updates, like this is the data that you receive in, including, like you said, the rays from the sun hitting you in the right places, right? This all activates and changes the way things get expressed, and it defines whether you have the potential to be healthy or not. It is not about how often you can go to the doctor. It is not about what pills you can take. All that stuff actually decreases your ability to be healthy. And I think people need to know that.
How
Like,
so?
well, because the more you rely on external sources for health, the worse off you're going to be, because it's just going to change the way that you approach life. It's going to change the way that you prioritize your health, even in the most subtle ways. Like it's just going to take that much away from your experience of yourself. And I think that's probably what I've come to realize, like the biggest disconnect in our society is that we've essentially externalized everything. We've externalized our food production. We've externalized our ability to do everything, right? Think about the iPhone. Like, it manages your entire life for you, right? There's even an app now for fasting to keep track of the amount of time that you're fasting. And it's funny. So I lead these monthly, it's called random fasting groups, where we all get together and I just on a whim say, okay, today we're going to fast for 72 hours. I actually downloaded the app because I saw so many people in my group using it that I wanted to just for me, I can't speak on anything that I haven't tried myself. So whenever something comes up a lot, I just go try it so that I could say, yeah, I tried it. But, I try not to rely on anything. So we come back to the topic of feet and footwear. I don't want my feet to have to rely on anything ever, right? I want to be able to, if I get caught in any situation, I want to be able to move through it and be confident that I can move through it. It's funny. I think about this a lot, and I experience this a lot these days. Is the more relaxed my foot is, the less prone I am to injury. It's not really how strong my foot is or how much callus I have. It's really how relaxed my foot can be. So if I'm not concerned, scared of my environment, my foot can relax. And even if I step on something kind of sharp, since my foot is relaxed, my skin can kind of just like tent over it, instead of, think about a balloon, right? So like when a balloon is flimsy, you can like poke it with something and it's not going to break the surface, the rubber surface. But once you blow up that balloon and there's a lot of tension on the surface, you could just touch it with anything and it'll blow, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same sort of concept with your foot. Obviously, there's much more complexity to it, but on a very basic level. So what causes your foot to be tense? It's your mind, right? If your mind is freaking out, it's tight. Your muscles are tight, and that's what causes all types of, pains and problems with and movement. Is that you're scared. Your mind is scared, and so it holds you tight as a protection mechanism. But the irony is that it does the opposite.
Yeah, yes and no. I think that it's amazing and impressive that you can do this, but I know that a lot of people are that in tuned, with their bodies to understand, how their own bodies work, and to get their mental state strong enough to control and, dictate, or at least have the rest of their body handle those situations, especially high stress situations and environments. I just don't think most people are at that place. But then, on the base physical realm, like we talked about before, I don't think people are doing the exercises or the proper movements with their feet, their ankles,
it takes practice.
Their Achilles tendon. Well, I think also it's knowledge, and I want to go into that with you because I think, especially the athletes I know, they can't understand why I go out and play in low top Chuck Taylors. If I do gotta play basketball, and it's like, you don't roll your ankle, you don't rupture your Achilles, like you don't do this. I'm like, no. Like, if anything, I got this nice flat shoe if I do need to play. And if anything, my ankle is able to move all around the place. I have to worry about something, being held in one central location. Like, I do my calf raises, I do my hex bar deadlifts with the tire, just doing as much as I can. And then even like when I'm sitting down in this chair, I'm sitting in a rolly chair, but my feet, the arch of my foot is just constantly being rolled in the chair right there. I know you talked about like having those toys right there, and I think there's something there. Like, your body actually likes it after you do it enough, because of like, what is it, 7,000 nerve receptors that are on the bottom of your feet. Like, they're actually just like, oh my God, touch something. Like, oh, you're touching the floor. Like, oh, it actually feels good. There's some kind of connection that the body has. But yeah, the biggest factors, exercise and stretches, definitely would be like the three-way calf raise, pointing your toes out, pointing your toes in, pointing them straight. That, again, as a young guy, I've rolled my ankle all the time. I never, luckily, had any knee injuries. The Achilles, the tendons going all the way from, the back of that heel all the way up to the knee. But, what are some other ones that people can do to strengthen those things? Because, I mean, you'll notice, too, there's the non-contact ACL injury is like the biggest thing ever. It's like the injury we all dread, but it happens to everybody.
Well, and I actually got this from a friend named Seth Minter, he calls himself the foot doctor. He trains mostly NFL players around movement patterns, but he said that most ACL injuries really are due to the fact that you believe that your foot is somewhere, but actually it's somewhere else because you don't have the proper sensory feedback. And so you make a move with the assumption of, my foot is at point A, it's really at point B, and then that throws everything off. So yeah, when you have all of this footwear and all of these layers between you and the ground, you don't know where you really are in space. Like, all those sensors are sort of turned off. Nick from the Foot Collective, often makes the reference of putting a blindfold on versus wearing sunglasses. And it's funny that it should be called out since we've had our whole discussion about sunglasses, but that's what causes the injuries. When it comes to what exercises to do, we spoke when we started about how far my journey has gone along. And I'm at the point now where I've sort of realized that it's whatever exercise makes you feel confident in your ability to do whatever it is that you want to do. It really, really, truly does not matter. Whatever you think is going to make you do it, like, great. Because going back to what I said, it's about moving out of the state of fear, because the state of fear causes that tension, and injuries happen in a state of tension. If you can be loose, if you could reach this I forgot what his name is, but he wrote that book called Supple Leopard, and it's this idea that if you can be totally flexible and loose.
That's a great book title. I can already tell where it's going, but that's an amazing book title.
If you can be supple and loose, you're not really ever gonna get injured. And I know that it's crazy and it's hard to conceptualize, but that's why this concept of fear being the biggest problem that we face as humans, because fear drives everything. It drives tension in your physical body, in your musculoskeletal body, which makes you more susceptible to injury. So if you think about why drunk people never get injured in car accidents, it's because they're drunk. They're totally loose. There's no tension, right? They just like flail around and everything's fine, right? That's how when a little kid, when they fall, they just bounce back up because they're totally, they don't even have a lot of bone. It's all cartilage. It's all rubbery. And then also tension or fear drives a stress response in your body, which causes you to drive all these stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline which decrease your immune system function. They mess with your digestive system. It messes up your entire body, right? So whatever can help you work your way out of a state of fear, that's what you need. And I can't tell you specifically what that is, because every person has their own constructs, right? So whatever can help you work out of that fear is going to help you stay out of injury. And I know it doesn't it's sort of a very abstract concept, but this is the world that we live in. Is a very abstract world, and every person has to figure out their own experience of it. And the journey is about moving into the state of love, which again sounds abstract, but and you can only really understand it when you're on that journey and have crossed beyond the barrier of fear, crossed away from that. But like, that's what I'm trying to communicate here, is that I'm moving away from the fear of, oh, what if I don't have the newest, coolest thing? And oh, what are people going to think of me if I don't have these things, right? What is going to happen to me if I don't have shoes on? What's going to happen to me if I don't have that amazing job? Right? It doesn't matter. Like we're all being guided by our intuition, whatever it is, and you're going to be okay if you can move out of that fear.
Yeah, I mean, I think we started off the talk like in a way different place in terms of like, reflecting on society itself, and it's not just shoes. There's a lot of things that I think we're moving out of the fog of the what's one of those diseases where you lose your memory, or we're coming out of this dementia days, like where we're starting to remember things like, oh wait, why do we have to go to a job? Why are we told we had to leave the farm and leave the land we once lived on in order to go work in a city for somebody else to create this thing? And it's like,
you're the perfect experience. Look at you. You're driving school buses around. You're like living your dream. As I see, one of the things that I was reflecting on before this call is like, you have this incredible ability to move and pivot and just and be and sort of live in revolt, right? Like I'm not going to do what I was told I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's
thank
been
you,
the
thank
sort
you
of
very much for that.
That's been a theme of your life, so I believe, right? I feel that from you.
Oh, I mean, even since basketball. I mean, like, hey, you're too short. It's like, oh, hold on, maybe you're too short. And luckily, I've been able to reflect on all that and look at it. That everybody who even did say that to me, it came out of a place of love. Fear, but love in terms of people cared about me. They didn't want me to get hurt. They wanted me to be happy and be safe and do the thing that was more guaranteed. So I don't even look at anybody who on a small level, my ego's still there, but at the same time, like, no, like this is a thing that people actually, they cared about me. They didn't want me to get hurt. They wanted me to do something great. And I think that's just been my my shtick, my brand, my who I am, my why, is, even though we have this system right there, that, you got to have a job and you got to work. And yeah, I do all those things. Like, I put this show up for free in order to amplify the messages that I have and the people around me have. Just say like, hey, just because this is the system at B doesn't mean you can't make it the way you want to make it. I love reality, like you can literally tinker and mess with, granted, I think a lot of people have different constraints around people's lives, where they come from, what they look like, that, can limit their accessibility, but the accessibility is there. And once you tap into it and you find the way, the crux, and then also you find a way to exude that energy out to, the people, the world, and, again, you find out what you need to be and what you need to do the things you want to do in life. And You just, that's like another hard thing to do, is like trying to figure out who you are, what your values are.
Yeah.
Because once you understand what your values are as a person and what makes you so you, like that's even like a truth you got to come to terms with. And it's not easy. You see people, it's great, as much as I'm a fan but not a fan of social media, is that I don't like they've again, another thing that sold us on what a community should look like. But it's like, okay, they were full of shit. They're not actually trying to build a community. But now how can you take the thing that they have and actually make it even more valuable than they were able to use the power of the thing that they have within the internet? So how do you actually create that amazing community where you live, where you're from, people from all around the world, to actually be a positive or impactful change to a lot of people? So again, I'm just a deep internal optimist, and I can find the best things in anything, even though it might not be the thing that I think has been a big detriment to society and individuals and personalities all around the world. So
No, I think
it's how
you
you
and
can
I
find it.
both. I think you and I both have experienced amazing things through social media, and social media on its own is a terrible community building platform, but it can be a driver for you to successfully build real community. It's just it's a vehicle. It's not the thing. It's not community, right? So like, I'm passionate about natural living and this barefoot mindset, so to speak, right? I connect with others who are also like that, and we then form a real community offline, right? We sort of you sort of converge, and then you break off of the platform.
That's the
So
most important part. How do I make this real now? Okay, it's real because it's happening in reality, and the connections online, but it still can't trump or beat the human to human experience, especially the social beings we are. How do we make that even more tangible?
yeah,
Like where you're
so,
going.
so so what's happening is more and more I'm hearing more and more people talk about this, about creating intentional communities, right? Creating places where all of us who enjoy the same things and who think in not exactly the same way, but in similar ways, get together, and we find a way to like do the real thing, to like live together in a certain place, and foster a real community, which is a group of people who are co-located and who create together and who just live together. I mean, it's so beautiful. Again, and more and more I see myself moving in that direction through the Foot Collective. There's this concept of building a headquarters where we all sort of work and live together. There's also there are other intentional communities around the world that have been doing this for a long time. It's not a new concept. It's just not mainstream, because the mainstream does not want you to do this. Because how are they going to sell you shit if you're totally happy and living within your group of people, and all you need is each other, and you don't need social media, and you don't need to go buy stuff, and you guys just and
Yeah,
it's
no, I think it's totally frowned and looked down upon. Even like,
yeah.
the situations I've lived in when I have like after like the South America trip, like um, lived with an ex, and then after we broke up, it's like, oh, let me go live in a collective. I want to be this content creator. I ended up finding people who are producers and directors, and audio engineers, and I've just always loved those environments. It's like the co-working space you actually live in. And it's always busy. Someone needs something filled, or something needs someone done. And like even in the place I live in LA, like look at the studio I'm in right now. You look around and it's just like, oh, I helped put this together when we all moved in, and now there's a place to record my podcast. There's I've gotten into mixing music and learning on the different audio engineering aspects, from music making to not just audio recordings and podcasts, like which I was originally taught in. So, I just love it. So it's why I do podcasts. I get to learn from people who have something, who know a lot more knowledge about a subject or fact, and to broadcast that out. And I think that's the dangerous part, though, is that unless people are willing to have those conversations, like you said, you could be in the co-living or co-community spaces, but unless you're able to, allow different thoughts in, because, like you said, not everybody's still going to think the same way. That has to be the difference. And that's just the thing I think that I'm working on right now, is creating these community organizational events that revolve around conversation, because conversation is something, as the social beings and creatures we are, it's the thing we're doing the least amount of, with not just the people we know or we're closest to or our family, but people we live around, like the microbiome. Like, why don't you know about your neighbors and how they feel and how they understand or how they're going to vote around things, that are going to immediately impact you and your family? These are conversations you need to be spending an hour or two a week with, the people who live closest to you. And so I'm organizing events like that here in LA to start happening once we can have a few people getting together and then broadcasting them, and just for people to hear, because we need more empathy. I think I posted some today. It's empathy in terms of we got to shut up and listen, and then try, when you're listening, try and figure out why that person's saying what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Not just like, oh, I'm ready for my rebuttal. I'm gonna get at that libtard, or I'm gonna make fun of this racist conservative. It's like, no. Take a breath. Yeah. Just stop. Yeah, so that's not it.
There's a great quote that I heard. It's probably one of my favorites. It says, "Understanding means there's nothing to forgive." If you fully understand the totality of somebody's life experiences, like you everything makes sense. Everything they do makes perfect sense, and you don't have to forgive them for anything, because it all makes perfect sense. And I love what you said about knowing your neighbors and what how your neighbors think and what they do. It's like, we move into places and we move there because of what we can afford, how much we like a place, right?
Again, so limiting.
And it's never really about who are we going to be living with. And so the beauty of these intentional communities I love what you did, by the way. I totally went over my head as I was saying it. Like you also created that. Like you live in this beautiful place with these roommates who all came together around a shared understanding, or a shared vision, not shared vision, but shared interests. And them, and you get to know them even more on a daily basis, and you guys create together, and you argue, I'm sure, and you challenge each other, and that's beautiful. That is living, right? It's not about always being comfortable. But it's about being intentional. It's about being challenged. It's about growing with a group of people that and we just don't really do that anymore. Like we're living in a building right now, and I have no idea who the people living next to me are, really. And we're working our way out of this, right? This is just like a step on the journey from who we were before to who we aspire to be, and who we're working to be in this pursuit of an amazing life experience of love and connection. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's really that simple. Like, how intentional are you being? Like, how much connection and love are you making in this world?
Yeah, I forgot you came out here. This is like what, not last July, or was it in the winter?
It was November last year.
Yeah, because we got a good softball game in.
Yeah, softball.
We lime scootered it up all the way around downtown. Yeah. Dude, I got a longboard since then, and I've just been longboarding it everywhere. It's why it took me 30 years to get a skateboard. I don't know why, but one of the best things I've done. Next stop is a motor. Wow. Yeah, I guess I got to.
It'll hurt until it doesn't anymore, right?
The next move is a motorcycle. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of owning a vehicle, but I think the chance to these roadways out here, like either go straight out of LA East or head north or even south. It's just like, oh man, so much good open road out here to get on a bike and just cruise. So that is the next step. But yeah, I'm super pumped for that. Yeah, man, like we keep getting to it. I mean, this what was the disease again? The foggy memory. The starts with the D.
Dementia.
dementia. I might have it. Um, all those concussions, right? This like foggy dementia, again, that we've been sold on, that like, and again, I think goes back farther than, 70 years of this great boom in the United States. We're talking the Industrial Revolution. Like, hey, we need you to come work in these factories to start producing,
Right.
mass producing, like, goods
That you
for
need to
everybody.
also that you also need to buy because we need to just fuel this thing that we're creating that we don't even know why we're doing it. We're just doing it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows why we're doing it. We're kind of just like all running around like chickens with our head cut off. Like,
Well, we're
it just like,
we're fulfilling other people's egos. If you really boil it down to its essence, it's everybody feeding ego, right? So the people who own the companies, why do you need this much of any of money stuff? Like we really don't. And then I live in this city, and it's like these monuments to ego, and it's where I'm here, so like I'm not. It's not that I'm being a hypocrite. I'm really doing, and this is just where I am. So it's a journey, right? Like I said earlier, minimalism is a journey. You just it's about being more conscious about what you have. It's not about having nothing. It's about just thinking a little bit more deeply about it, and usually that leads to getting rid of stuff.
yeah, where in Miami are you? Like, what area? And you live with the girlfriend now, right?
Yeah, right now in Brickell, she owns this place, so it's this we love living here. Now we have our garden right out here. I have my desk has a view of the garden. It's going incredibly. We've turned the balcony into like a forest, and yeah, I get to see the whole city, and you know, it's just we're just making it our way.
Where are you guys planning on heading out to when you do leave the city? Are you guys planning on getting a home, getting out?
I really don't know. I mean, we have a lot of ideas, and we've been looking at houses around the South Florida area, but then also considering, what if we just go hop around for a while, explore different intentional communities, get to know them, study them, find out, what they're all about, see if maybe there's one that we really love, or if we just start to understand the components to create our own. I mean, we have a really beautiful community, and I say community, and I don't use that word lightly. We have a really awesome community down here in Miami. People, very intentional, very conscious people that we get together, and we grow and challenge each other, and and we uh, we knock down
Keep going.
microphone balls together.
We knocked out. Ah, no, I'm a victim of that myself. I feel like I have to be in it in terms of like, this is where it is happening. This is where life, I definitely feed off the energy of, the places I live. So,
Well, so here's the thing. So, right, again, it's sort of fear basis FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
yeah,
But when you go out in nature, and we just took a road trip up all the way up to North Carolina, and we stopped in the most beautiful natural places, like the energy that you get from being in nature is unlike anything you'll ever experience in a city. It is incredible. Like you just feel alive, and
I'm
nothing.
due for a good Mexican road trip. Like, just hopping from different Mayan pyramids, like just in the middle of the rainforest. There's no one else there, and it's you in like the middle of the jungle. So I'm long overdue for a good trip like that. I'm planning on one like this weekend, just getting out, leaving the phone at home, and just like driving east or north, spending the night somewhere, because it's like you got to get out. I mean, I
Yeah,
think everything is
there's so many great experiences and opportunities near you. It's like,
yeah,
oof.
yeah. Like I said, just getting to the beach at least once a week has been something I haven't done. So, just been doing that for the past 2 months has been, you know, been definitely more fulfilling in my life, and, giving me more happiness just to say, oh, you don't need to be working or producing or doing stuff all the time. Even the word producing, it's like you have to be, outputting things. And
Yep.
if you're not outputting things, like, you get a fear and a FOMO because, it's like, oh, I have to be contributing. I have to put something out. I have to put something out. And I think that's, again, feeding into the poor system of social media and, creation, where it's just like, no, you don't have to do something every day. You don't have to do something all the time.
Right. So I think the I think a great way to sort of wrap this up is to pose the question, like, what is the place from which you are creating, right? What is it? What is that? What is driving the creation? And I'm not asking you specifically. I'm asking this as a general question to anybody who's listening. It's like, what is it that's causing you to create? What is it that causes you to move, to exercise, to eat a certain way? What is that source? Is it love or is it fear? Right? Like I create and I share on my social media because I'm just like loving what I'm doing. I'm excited about it. And I don't create on a schedule and I don't force myself to do anything. I post only what I feel like posting and when I feel like posting. And that might sound scary to people like that are entrepreneurial and whatnot, but that's, I mean, for me, that's living.
Completely. You know, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's like finding out what your value system is. And the person who we're never the most honest with, who we need to be, is ourselves. And until you're going to be honest with yourself, yeah, because you can tell people everything else. They're easy. Other people outside of you are easy to trick. They're easy to convince, but there's you who you have to convince and you have to trick. And if you can't convince that person and you can't sell them that this is who you are, this is what you want to do and why you do it every day, then you're going to be living in, just problems. You're going to be living in chaos. You're going to be living in, depression, anxiety, fear. And it's like, don't do that to yourself. And I could obviously say I'm a victim of that. I've done that to myself, thinking I got to do this or people need this. And again, stop looking outward to, what society or the world wants from you, and figure out, what you can be for the world and society. And that is a great note to wrap it up on. Jeff, thank you so much for jumping on. Please, we need to be doing more shows, having you on whenever, and doing some in person, hopefully. I might be coming to Miami with the bus in August, so, hopefully a nice bus podcast on a bus. But please let people know where they can find you, where they can, I'm going to have some of those links in the bio to, like, that one sports doctor. I know I have a lot of athletes listen to that show. But if you could say his name again, some books that people could be reading, please use this time to share away.
Well, first of all, like I've already said it, but you are an incredible role model, I think, an inspiration to people to live their life their way. I think there's nothing more important. Your bus has, that the idea has just continued to grow, and you've pivoted with it, and it's amazing to see that. And so thank you for what you do. I'm excited to see the bus here in Miami. You could find me on Instagram at the Urban Barefoot. You can find me on Facebook at the same place. I have a YouTube page I don't really use that much, but you can find me there. Send me a message. I love to interact with people. I have way too many books to list. I have a landing page, a website, theurbanbarefoot.co, which has books, all the podcasts that I've done, and how to choose good footwear brands, and yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Amazing. And dude, it's been a great friendship, way back since, I can't even remember where we first met or how Jeremy connected us, but dude, it's been a crazy ride. Can't wait till we see each other again in person. And hold off real quick. I'm just going to sign everybody out before I end the live stream. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everybody else for tuning into the show. Remember to do the whole subscribe thing, I don't want to say it, but I got to say it because it helps people find the show. It helps people learn from the conversations that we just had. If you find them inspiring, if you find them influential, or if you learn something, more importantly, go ahead and like that stuff, give it a share, and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Check out all the amazing other shows that we have, whether it's on iTunes, Google, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or YouTube, because you're watching this right here. And thank you so much to everybody who watches these things. Like, it's incredible. You guys watch like at least 20 minutes of me talking with somebody on average, which is amazing, rather than listen to it on your iPhone. So kudos to everybody there. Amazing retention rate you guys have. And yeah, we have no more sponsors for this show. We're kind of naked now. So that's it, guys. You're either on the bus or off the bus. Find your bus wherever it is out there. And we'll see you next time tomorrow with Danielle Gertner. Good show. She's ownership coach. We're going to be owning some more shit tomorrow. You want to check that out. But have a good one, everybody. Peace.